Good morning. This is the lesson for Cinco de Mayo 5520 for algebra. We're going to talk about parallel lines versus intersecting lines. Parallel lines look like these two lines here. Think about railroad tracks, straight doors and windows, things like that. Those are all parallel lines. Intersecting lines, think of like an intersection. It's where two lines cross, two roads cross, anything crosses. Those are intersecting lines. How can you tell if two lines are parallel? They're going to have the same slope. Okay? And the slope in a line, remember in y equals mx plus b, the slope is whatever number comes before the x. It has to be exactly the same. They both have to be a positive whatever, a negative whatever. They have to be the exact same number. They can't differ in any way. And again, you're only looking at this number that comes before the x. So let's look at this first example 1 here. You're looking at the number before the x. They're both a positive 3, so the slope on both of those lines are positive 3. So will they be parallel lines? Yes, they will be. Number 2. Again, we look at that number right before the x. Looking at the slope. On the top one here, it's 1/2. On the bottom one, it's a negative 1/2. Those are not the exactly same numbers, so those lines are going to cross. So are they parallel? No, they are not. Question 3 here. We have a 7 and a 17. Are those the same number? No. So are the lines parallel? No. Number 4. Look at the number right before the x, the slope number. This is a negative 2. The bottom one is a positive 2. So those are not parallel. So the answer is no, because they are not the same number. It's as simple as that. All you're looking at is that one number. If they're the same number, they're parallel. If they're different numbers, they're intersecting because they're not parallel. Any line eventually, even if it's just a little bit off parallel, will eventually intersect, even if it's a million miles out in space. If it's just the least bit off, it will intersect, which is why when they were making railroads and things like that, they had to be so accurate to make sure that the train tracks always stayed exactly the same distance apart. Okay, so now we're going to talk about intersecting lines. Those are the lines that cross. Remember I said think about it like an intersection at a road where you'd see a stoplight or a four-way stop, something like that. It's two lines that cross. Now this specific point right here, the actual crossing point, that point is called the common solution. It's a difficult vocab word for kids to remember because that doesn't really make sense for what it is, but it's just a dot that two lines cross is called that common solution. How can you tell if two lines will intersect? It's the same way that you can tell if they're parallel. They're going to have different slopes. So again, in that y equals mx plus b, that number right before the x must be different if they are intersecting. And like I said on the last slide, this doesn't mean that you can actually see the intersection. It just means at some point they will intersect. It could be millions of miles out in space that they intersect. It could be on the piece of paper that they intersect. You may or may not be able to see it, but if their slopes are different, they will intersect. So let's look at this first question here. We have a 7 and a 7. Those are the same slope, so will they intersect? The answer is no. Those lines will be parallel because they have the same slope. Question 2. Will these lines intersect? We have a positive 1/2 and a negative 1/2. Even though they both have the 1/2 in them, they are different because one is positive and one is negative. So are these intersecting lines? Yes, they are. Question 3. We have 17 and 27 are the numbers before the x. Those are different slopes. So are these lines intersecting? Yes, they are. And question number 4. We have a 3 and a 3. Those lines those slopes are the same. So are these lines intersecting? No. Those would be parallel. And the same with these ones. These ones up here, they would be parallel. That is your homework. You have that is your notes. You have 1 page of homework, and the only thing that I want you to do on there is look at that slope, look at that number before the x. If they're the same, you're going to write parallel. If they're different, you're going to write intersecting. This should be really fast homework for you today.